We love small multifamily and fix and flips because there's a shortage of housing and the deal flow is still relatively consistent. But really what it comes down to, our main thesis is, as long as we have construction and we buy an asset under value, we can build an equity through our construction process.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss. Grateful to be here. Another beautiful day. Another wonderful guest. We got Kevin Dugan in the house. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Yona. Pleasure to be on here with you today and excited to drop some knowledge bombs for some people.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I really am. You know, we've had the pleasure of meeting at several conferences and spent some time together. And I'm just, impressed. Everyone has a story and everyone has their experience that kind of led them to real estate and led them into their specific niche of real estate, which I'm always fascinated by. And that's really why I created this podcast, is kind of dig in and get to know people, learn their stories and see what we can learn from their lives and their stories. So I'd love for you, Kevin, just give our listeners a little bit of a background to who you are and how you got started in real estate.
Of course. My name is Kevin Dugan. I'm an owner operator of Altus Investment Group. We run a vertically integrated company in Chicago. A little contrarian, I know. I live in Los Angeles, so I built a remote company, which is different than most and vertically integrated in a different state. And from there, we're specialists in construction management, property management, acquiring off-market deals, putting the sweat equity into those projects and, truly creating equity through our renovation process. And then in addition, we're heavily into the Florida market right now over the last 2.5 years, so diversifying a little bit. And then my humble beginnings, I would say, start off with the rich dad, poor dad paradigm shift. So that's how it got me here today. And that was back in college, way back in the late 2000s.
Wow. And I think a lot of people, like yourself, that little purple book, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, really changed a lot of people's lives. But not everyone that reads that book actually ends up taking action and changing their lives and going into real estate and realizing that, life is really about committing to having your assets work for you and understanding how money works, et cetera. And so it's always fascinating to me to see the people who are the action takers. What was your first property, your first real estate investment?
So after reading the book in 2008, it took me some time to actually buy my first property. I worked a couple crazy jobs. And then in 2012, November is when I bought my first fix and flip from Los Angeles with a partner who had construction knowledge of, 20 years. And then we flipped a couple houses remote. To say the least, they were challenging, but we kept things under budget. On time, we didn't do. And from there, we learned invaluable lessons of what it takes to actually run in real estate. And, back in 2012, you could throw a rock at any house and have made great money. At the bottom, when there's the pain, that's when you really want to buy and catch the momentum running upwards.
To take that leap, even after whatever amount of time it is, right? From you're reading a book and then saying, hey, I can do this. Was it, you had other influences? Do you have people or friends or family or anyone that had done real estate or done a fix and flip like that? Or was it just like the HGTV or who knows what was kind of influencing you?
After reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I really knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but not knowing what that means. The word gets thrown around a lot nowadays. It's like, the hip, cool trend thing to do. But it was more about that realization that I wanted to have better control over my life, my future, my finances. And a lot of that had to reflect in terms of taking control over my financial education. So our fix and flip was something that I just started a new job. I'd saved up about $50,000. And I told my close friend, Tim, that, hey, I'm ready to invest in projects. And he's like, I love Chicago. I'm like, I know nothing about Chicago, but if the numbers make sense, let's do it. So we just jumped into it while having a full-time job, which was...
That's crazy. And you were in California at the time?
Yep. Yeah. Still in California right now. I've lived in Chicago for about 6 months. Story for another day, back in 2021. But for the most part, all of my investing career has been out of state.
Wow. So investing from California to Chicago on a fix and flip. I mean, that seems like a nightmare. It seems,
Yeah,
right?
contractors are definitely a thing. So, but my partner Tim, he worked for Westfield Mall's $20 million project, so he was used to working with high level professional contractors. But when you get into like a sub $50,000 renovation, at the time it was like a really solid deal. We bought it for 50, put 50 into it, sold it for 190. But it's a lot of work to micromanage that type of smaller money on the construction side. So yeah, definitely has its headaches. And, we still do a lot of construction today, which has its own headaches.
Yeah, but I mean, your construction nowadays is probably much more scalable, meaning you're not doing are you still doing any of the single family fix and flips or kind of moved on from that?
We do actually. Yeah. So we love small multifamily and fix and flips because there's a shortage of housing and the deal flow is still relatively consistent. But really what it comes down to, our main thesis is, as long as we have construction and we buy an asset under value, we can build an equity through our construction process. And it is a lot more scalable now. I have a construction partner in Florida and like a construction company partner. Big difference in like, hey, a guy and his guys, and they just try to like get some stuff done. We're past those days. It took me a long time to break out of that, trying to take care of people and try to help change them and provide opportunities. Because I'm a remote investor, I'm not there to give that guidance, that leadership, to explain like how they can get better. So we just upgraded our partnerships, for lack of a better description.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that's how you become kind of vertically integrated, is when you have all those components in-house of sorts, right? Obviously, a partnership is still considered in-house, right? Because you have a partner in it.
Yeah. Well, that's the Florida vertical. In Chicago, we're truly vertically integrated. We have like a 25-person staff, construction, our own projects for clients and internal. So we have a lot more control over what projects come in and how the work is actually done.
Oh, wow. So you're doing third-party construction as well. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's been part of our DNA for such a long time that because of that, it's how we believe that even in a tougher market right now, if we buy at a good price point, we can then roll up our sleeves and like literally put in the sweat equity.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what have you seen, even like you said, even nowadays, like people are still buying fix and flips, people are still doing that. And from the construction side, obviously you're looking at deals for investment all the time. You're trying to underwrite, you're trying to find the right deals that pencil out. But I mean, are you still seeing like positive flow of business on the construction side from other people that are buying and fix and flips and doing that?
Great question. I mean, we're hyper selective on the deals that we do. Like 20 deals hit the desk a day. That's like 400 a month, and we buy maybe one or two. So many deals hit the desk where we're just like, this is too skinny for us. The calculation of best case, expected, and break even is like outside of what we feel comfortable with. So we just pass on it because we don't want to work for the sake of working. And then on the flip side, for our client services on construction, there's a lot of people who are just like some handy guys who'll come in. They have no idea how to estimate a project. They'll come in ultra low and then they'll just change order. So they get the business, they get into your property, they tear down the walls, and then they're stuck with you. And then they're like, oh, we didn't realize that we needed to shift this wall over here. Oh, look, we didn't see what was behind with electrical and plumbing. Change order. So that's unfortunately the games that are being played. And we try to be as professional and direct as possible. There's always unknowns, but it's a tricky environment. You have to work harder nowadays and continuously provide great customer service. But we're in it for the long term. There's deeper reasons as to like the work that we do. So we're okay with continuing to build, even though it's not always easy to build.
For sure. And I think that's the biggest challenge that I, and really anyone who's dealt with construction with contractors, is those change orders and just kind of the dishonesty that is notorious with that profession. But when you can handle it and take it in-house and really relieve that, I think that really changes the game.
Yeah. The dishonesty is like, I don't want to say and generalize everybody. Sometimes it's just not having the expertise as like a true project manager and experience to like see the future of what a project will be. So it's like, hey, there's levels to it. You can literally find, like, you can go to Home Depot, you can find some guys, you can manage them yourself and be that project manager. Then there's like a project lead who has a small crew. They work together for some time, but they may not know how to like estimate an entire project from start to finish. Like, okay, start with the demo, make sure the dumpster's there day one,
Right.
tear down everything, clean up the site so it's clean, start out with framing in the right location. Like, they don't know how to like plan the steps, and then their budgets get thrown out. And then there's construction companies, which are like, all right, we've passed the stage of the small stuff. Like, we know how to run projects. We have a team. We have great subs. And then it's about like marketing, creating more business. They're going to cost a little bit more, but you don't have to worry about them. So there's just levels to that game.
Absolutely. And you mentioned kind of in passing that your why, or your, the reasons are deeper behind, why you do the investments. Is that I'd love for you to share some of that with us. Like, what drives you? What keeps you inspired?
Yeah. So thanks for asking, Yona. That means a lot to me, because when it comes down to it, like, on a simplistic side, business it's in essence, it's about the same. It's about a product, a service, a process, different industry. So then it's really about, how do you make an impact towards the people that you serve? And it's all about serving, providing value. So like, your clients need to get value. Your employees need to get value. For us, our renters and tenants and vendors need to get value. So it's across the entire stack that everybody must thrive in that particular business, or eventually it may break down. And of course, there's everything's like a distribution curve. There's like businesses that make a lot of money that don't do good work and somehow still make money. Then there's like, in the bulk of businesses who are like trying to figure things out, then there's some businesses that just don't survive. But I say this from the standpoint of, for me, through the hard work of being an entrepreneur and working in Southside Chicago and seeing a lot of people who need help, I'm really blessed. I was born in West Los Angeles. I went to Santa Monica High School. Like, I was just lucky, born lucky. And my creative outlet is through entrepreneurship, through business. And I want to make deeper impacts in the community that we serve. And in part of that's like education. So providing financial education, providing great housing, treating people respectfully, trying to get them resources so that they can help increase their education to improve their generations. Of course, our investors are absolutely essential to us. Like, we want to make sure that they're always taken care of and make money on projects, and know that we're consistently trying to grow. And it's not about just making money. It's about making a deeper impact on a larger scale.
Yeah. And that's a tough, South Side of Chicago is a really rough neighborhood.
So Southside Chicago is like equivalent to saying like, oh, like Los Angeles, like half of Los Angeles, because it's such a large geographical location. But there's like South Side, where like you cross the train track and like there's drugs being dealt. And then there's like South suburbs where it's like, all right, this is just like suburbia down here. So I akin Chicago to just any other large metro, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle. It's just a large city, and you have to jump through hoops of dealing with large cities that have like population density.
That's true. And it's so true that, sometimes the submarket or the from street to street or block to block or sections of the city are going to be different. But are you exclusively are your projects, you're in those rougher neighborhoods, or where do you invest in?
No. We can't do that.
Okay. I was thinking.
I'm like a West Los Angeles kid.
I know, that's why I was surprised you mentioned.
I don't have enough heart. For me, it's like, your health is everything, right? Like, if you get hurt on the job and I put somebody there, that's on me as the owner, and I could never do that. So we bought one property in like Southside Chicago, and it's just a pain in the butt. But we do the suburbs. We do like north of the University of Chicago, Bronzeville. We do like a historical Beverly area. We do some north side stuff as well. So we're more of like a friendly South Side company, but we're also trying to change our culture, because through more of these heavier management intensive areas, it just creates a lot of logistical items. Like, we do a lot of Section 8 housing. So government is like a lot of communication.
Sure.
Construction's a lot of, steps in there. So we're trying to become smarter and more efficient in our operations, tech forward, change the culture long term so that it's not as much of a heavy lift across our team.
Gotcha. And you're also invested in Florida, right? You mentioned you have a
Yeah.
partner in Florida.
Yeah. So thanks for asking. Because Chicago's like homegrown built. Florida, we're on to our 11th deal out there right now with my partner, Carlos. And honestly, it's way easier. I hate to say it. For everybody listening, partnerships are one of the biggest and most beneficial things that you can do, but they also are complicated because you're literally getting into a business marriage. So if you're not ready to marry somebody, and I highly recommend dating, aka like do a small deal or like see how their skills complement you.
Mm-hmm.
I tell Carlos all the time, like, dude, I respect you. I know how much work you have. Like, I have that same work in Chicago. I don't want to rebuild it out there. Like, we do 50-50 on deals because I'm tapping into his 20 years of construction network and experience. So I don't have to build it again. So I don't have to worry that, like, hey, are we going to be on time, on budget? Like, he's incentivized to be in the deals.
Yeah.
So we're working in alignment, and he handles not just only construction, like he has great design taste. He's like fun to be around. So like, takes the edge off of construction drama. But partnerships are a way where you can tap into other people's networks as long as you start to build that trust and track record with them.
Right.
So they can go fantastically for the long term, but also sometimes they just play a course and like, okay, let's keep it casual and like we aren't a good fit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and from the sound of it, it sounds like you've had some personal experience with maybe
I've had some bad
partnerships that just didn't work out. Like what's an example without like, you don't have to name names, but like an example of something that kind of just went sour?
A lot of times it was like earlier in my career, miscommunication and really delineating responsibilities are super critical in partnerships. And when you're young, to being a business owner and the business is inherently tough the way it was structured, most people don't build remote companies like I did. So wouldn't recommend that to most people. If you do, you definitely need great partners who are operating in state. But oftentimes there was a breakdown of being on the same page and orientation towards like where we wanted to go into the future. So one, challenging situations, like me and my stepdad, we were working together in Chicago on our property management side. And when I quit my job in 2019 to do the company full time, like I casually said, like, hey, I'm going to continue to grow this business. And at one point I would want to hire our, property manager at that time, Tamika, to become full time. And he didn't take that the right way. And because we didn't clarify what that meant, it was just kind of left as like a blanket statement. It wasn't even like, hey, like I'm going to take her today and like you're on your own. It wasn't meant with maliciousness, but those words sat with him and completely construed what the situation was to the point where he took actions that had a ripple effect. And then I took action that had a ripple effect. And then it created this disconnect and frustration that was honestly just a misinterpretation, because nobody should ever break up a relationship over property management. We still struggle with that today, even though we know it's one of our key pillars to make a deeper impact in the communities we serve, because we get so many touch points. So it's like a dynamic that we have to juggle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and to your point, those relationships, especially when you have a family member that you're doing business with, it can get a little complicated because unfortunately, one miscommunication can lead to bad feelings, and then bad feelings can lead to really, resentment. And that it takes a long time to kind of work through that. But yeah, in general, partnerships, bad community, or I don't know, I want to say bad communication, but not being aligned, I think that you mentioned is key, because you grow and your partner grows, and you may have different visions of what that growth looks like. And unless you're growing together, and really, to be honest, this can be applied to any type of relationship, right? Marriage, or if often I've seen couples that they're both amazing people, but they're not growing together. They're growing separately. And then they end up kind of going their separate ways because they're not spending enough time together in that growth. They spend time together, but not in the way that they're kind of growing as people or growing up. And that's really, really important, especially in a business as well. You want to make sure that your business is constantly growing and that every partner is on the same page.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, Yona. I mean, the communication, having that alignment is really important for everybody across the board. And for those who are how would I say, like ambitious to want to keep building.
Hmm.
It's something that you'll always have to balance. Like myself, like I love to build, but I also have to be very conscious that if you build and you ignore everybody and you're alone when you build something, then what is the value of your life? Because you're going to pass away at some point. The people you care about are going to just remember you for building, as opposed to like, were you there when it was important? Were you
Wow.
there with your children, like on those special moments when they got on their bike for the first time, when they were born, like your wife, when, she made a breakthrough on like in her work, were you there to celebrate your friends? They're going to remember, were you there or were you not? And as a business owner, a lot of times you sacrifice, but you only have so long, like so many sacrifice points before it hits breaking point. So yeah, communication, being in alignment is really critical, and keeping that line open to be on the same page.
Yeah, that's so hard also as an entrepreneur, like building businesses. You end up spending so much time, and it's like it's a sacrifice. But at the same time, you don't want to miss out on living, and
Yeah.
life and family.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part is like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm like, oh, I want freedom. Like I remember writing in my goals like way back in the day, like, hey, I wanted to have $10 million by 32 and like, 20 different apartment buildings, and not really knowing the steps to get there. Like that ambition is kind of blind of like the actual work it takes and
Sure.
actually how to work smart to get there. So there are a lot of traps that you can fall into. I have a lot of empathy for those who are building their own, vision of the world, because it's not easy. There are a lot of great people out there, like Cody Sanchez is fantastic, Dan Martell, and listening to a lot of their work, Gary Vee, like a lot of these people are like promoters to help individuals like build themselves up and learn the skills faster.
It's funny you mention that because there's also at the same time a lot of people, social media marketers who are like huge and big influence and everything like that. And they're not entirely, authentic, or they're not entirely who they say they are, or have done what they are promoting, etc. And that to me like rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And it's hard as a consumer to be sensitive and be aware, like, who should I align with that? Should I, take that? Like, how do you kind of use your sensors your filters to like, is this someone that I want to align with?
Great question. I mean, I haven't thought about that much. I do think a lot about traditional media, and I'm hyper skeptical towards like the Fox, the CNN, like just because I've already seen that they just try to stir up drama. Like the world isn't about like, how do you make somebody angry at somebody else? It's like, how do we unify on this world to progress forward? I mean, it's like, it should be very simple, right? It's like, why create enemies instead of like unification? Like we all want the same thing. You want love, you want happiness, you want some good experiences, you want to be able to afford like food, eggs, you want to not have to worry about your health and safety. But the media tends to like just stir the pot and divide. And I'm not a fan of that.
For sure.
So getting back to your question, some of these other influencers, I'd say probably earlier on in my career and business cycle, I would have been like, oh, like that sounds great. Like, how do I jump in? And I've jumped into like MLMs in the past, like it hyped up and it sounds great. I jumped into bad sales jobs in the past and didn't really know any better. But some of these influencers I mentioned, when they speak and I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I've lived through that. That is definitely like true words of wisdom of, whether it's your copywriter putting that out there or there's truths to that statement,
right.
From like a fundamental standpoint of just living through the experience. So I would really go towards those who've like proven they've built something and they're like an operator first.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a proven track record that you can verify. And then they're like, okay, they've been through the trenches. They've gone through like the cycles. They've built up a team. Now they're just marketing and educating. And now they're just like the machine's growing on their end. And a lot are giving back to just help. Because when you help more people, you're always going to make more money. That's like inevitable.
Right.
So they're just a lot more vocal than everybody else.
Absolutely. I hear that. Very good perspective. Kevin, the time flies over here, and I want to transition to what we call the final four. And these are 4 questions I ask all my guests. So first question to you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
Ooh, so worst job would have to be working at Empire Today, selling carpet and flooring right out of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, jumped into this 100% sales job. I thought I was going to make 6 figures out of college. Far from it. I got paid less than minimum wage, working 60 hours a week. So worst job, but it built character, built grit. And then it also just taught me some fundamental like relationship building skills. So always a positive that comes out of it.
Yeah, there's always some positive, but the negative kind of outweighs it.
Yeah.
What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? And I know you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad earlier, but I'm wondering if there's anything else or more recently.
Yeah. 2 books that bridge to each other. So one is Who Not How by, totally drawn out the name. But it's called Who Not How. I'm totally forgetting the name of the author. How embarrassing. But it's pretty much the premise of like hiring other people. And then the other book is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, which I call it more of the tactical version of that book, because as a business owner, embracing hiring people is like an essential skill. And I was about to sell all my businesses, like shut them down in 2021 until I read these books. So
very cool. Yeah. I mean, Who Not How that's awesome. And the other one I'm actually not familiar with, but you mentioned Dan Martell before, and we'll definitely add that to the show notes.
Yeah, please do. Because it's great. Like if you don't have a personal assistant, that's like essential worker for a business. Helps like reorganize your email. Like my email is at like 2,000 religiously for a long time, and finally dropped below like 750. So kudos to myself.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, but it's a skill. It really is to get that down. Yep. Third question: what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this could be anything.
Storytelling. Something I've lived a lot of experiences, but I wouldn't call myself a storyteller. And it's really just to help people emotionally grab into situations that I've experienced to hopefully trigger something where they can make a shift in their life.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. It really is. I mean, and it goes almost overlooked oftentimes, but it's so powerful. If you want to get a message across using stories, and especially with the use of social media, it's so imperative to be good at that skill. So that's awesome. I don't know if you've come across StoryBrand, but that's also like an incredible work to help with that and build that.
Yeah, thanks for the share. I heard about it. I feel like I put it on a list and then it got like lost. So I'll bring it back up.
We'll bring it back up. Okay. And we'll put it in the show notes also if anyone wants to check that out. Fourth and final question: what does success mean to you?
Success to me is continuously leveling up on my business side to the point where, I've hired people to take over for certain ventures. And then, I continuously build on that end, and we're making impact in the community on a regular basis. So this isn't just financial impact. This is like education-based impact. This is like community contribution. This is truly like, okay, a ripple effect for generations past the work that I'm directly involved in.
Love it. Yeah, love that. So clear. Just keep that in the forefront of your mind, and everything else will kind of fall into place.
Thank you, Yona.
Awesome, Kevin. This has been a pleasure. Really, like I said, it did fly by, and I'm really grateful for you taking the time out today and spending it with us.
Likewise, I appreciate your time as well. Thank you as well for the LinkedIn push and challenge shout out, because it's a fantastic place to meet like-minded individuals on a much easier level. So thank
100%,
you, Yona.
100%. And finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah. So if you want to know anything about our company and our investments, businessownersinvest.com. You can get a free PDF there. And then find me on LinkedIn, Kevin K. Dugan, Dugan.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put all that in the show notes, and absolutely check it out. Check Kevin out. Connect with him. And yeah, thanks again. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Yona. Appreciate it.
And thanks to our listeners. You guys make this podcast happen. Otherwise, it would just be me and Kevin having a great conversation, which is cool in itself. But guys, thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.